Welcome to VVork. This is the continuation of a video series where we're discussing containers, Docker, Kubernetes, and VMware PKS with Marc Alumbaugh. In this video, Marc will discuss the difference between VMware PKS and Kubernetes. Let's get started.
Alrighty, so let's dig in a little bit on the difference between Kubernetes and Enterprise PKS. What is Kubernetes doing for me? Kubernetes is that orchestration piece that is going to handle scheduling my container. So that's my application, the scheduling it. I could scale my application by using a Kubernetes primitive that's called a deployment or replicas. Kubernetes is watching if I'm supposed to be having, let's say, 2 of something and one of them becomes unavailable, he'll handle the resilience of saying, listen, you were supposed to have 2 of those, 1 died. Kubernetes will handle rescheduling it somewhere else. So it sounds a lot like vSphere HA in this regard, but only it's for a container that it's handling that resilience. I could do day 2 operations with Kubernetes. I've got version 1.1 of my application. I've got version 1.2. I could apply that, and Kubernetes will handle doing the scheduling, the rescheduling of my version 1.2, and it's got the capabilities to make sure that the new version is working before it deploys any more of them. So it's a very robust solution, and I will tell you, as you learn it, you'll see that there's lots of things that you can make a relationship to. The DRS, if you know scheduling, how DRS works, you'll see the scheduling that Kubernetes does, there's a similarity. The resilience piece here is going to resemble a lot of high availability inside vSphere. So Kubernetes is handling what is the desired declarative state of my application. If I said I wanted 2 of something, he's going to make sure that I have 2. If something dies, he will reschedule whatever components have died and make sure that that you're in the desired state that I've said I wanted. However, who's watching over Kubernetes? Part of when we looked at our Kubernetes cluster, my cluster was made up, if you remember, of a master or masters and so many worker nodes. Those worker nodes are, in most cases, going to be a virtual machine. Well, what happens if that virtual machine dies? One of my worker nodes goes away. This is where PKS comes into play. He's going to handle the ability for me to be able to do things like expanding a cluster, creating my cluster, doing a day 2 operations. If we find that there's a bug or an enhancement that we want to roll out, it's PKS is the piece that's handling what we call repaving your cluster. The repaving it is, I have my cluster deployed, it's running PKS, let's say version 1.5.0. I want to install 1.5.1, which is going to upgrade my feature sets that I have both in Kubernetes as well as the feature sets that I have in PKS. PKS is the thing that's doing that day 2 operation. I'm going to say I want to repave, so he'll, in an organized manner, shut down one master node, deploy a new master node that is now at the later version. Shut down another master node, repave it. And he'll keep going through that through all of my cluster, my Kubernetes cluster. So PKS is handling the desired state of your Kubernetes cluster. Kubernetes is handling the desired state of your application. You saw this picture earlier in some of the slides, and I just want to reiterate for you. you're still going to need to set up your physical infrastructure down at the bottom. That is a given. You need to get your enterprise-grade servers running, enterprise-grade switches and routers. You're going to need enterprise storage. That all still needs to be deployed. On top of it, as we're normally used to, we're going to install probably vSphere on top of that. Hopefully you're doing something with NSX already for your networking so that we've got software-defined networking coming into play. vSAN's not required for enterprise PKS. You can use it, or you could continue to use your enterprise storage, whatever that is today. You will then, on top of that, put PKS. PKS, again, is the tool that is handling the orchestration of Kubernetes. We will then spin up a Kubernetes cluster. And in this illustration, I'm showing you a single master node, and I'm showing you 3 worker nodes over here. So it's PKS that is handling the creation of that. Which version of Kubernetes you're going to get in that cluster is dependent on the version of PKS that you've installed. So if I installed 1.5.1 over here, I'm going to get a 1.14 version of Kubernetes deployed. So again, there's that correlation between PKS and Kubernetes. Kubernetes is where I'm going to run my containers. So my containers run on top of my Kubernetes cluster. So I deploy a series of containers or pods. These containers or pods is what gives me my application up on top of the stack. So the end result is, you'll hear people say it's all about the application. How am I running the application? And your application is going to, in the years ahead, are going to be these containerized microservices, which are running on top of Kubernetes. We need a way to run Kubernetes enterprise grade. That gives us PKS. PKS, in turn, is going to be allowing us to integrate with NSXT. NSXT is where I'm going to get my networking, and I'm going to be able to get my security. So that's where we're going to transition to next. We're going to go ahead and start digging into exactly how does this integration work between PKS and NSXT.
In the next video, Marc will discuss the relationship between VMC on AWS and VMware PKS. Join us in the next video to learn more.